Hello, it's Gemma. Welcome back to my channel. I just wanted to hop on today really and do a quick video about my pre-op experience. I said I was going to do this anyway, but when I went to the pre-op appointment, it was certainly not what I was expecting, so I thought it would be handy to go through what it covered. It shouldn't be too long of a video. I've had my hair chopped today. I've had a lot of length off, so I'm still trying to get used to that, but overall I'm happy with it. But yeah, let's crack into it. So I went for my pre-op appointment on Tuesday. It's now Friday the 9th, and I went on Tuesday the 6th. The hospital I'm having my procedure at is in London, so we had to go down to London. So it was about a 2.5 hour drive with the traffic in the end, which we were expecting, and it wasn't too bad. So we get to the hospital, and we're there a bit early, so we go into reception. The receptionist hands me some forms to read through and fill in and sign a bunch of things. And then the nurse comes to fetch me for the appointment. So she takes me upstairs, and we get into the room. And this is where I think expectation versus reality started to differ. So I tell you what I was expecting. I was expecting a huge hospital, first of all, kind of like an NHS hospital. And you know, when you go to an NHS hospital, if you've got multiple tests to have, you'll be in one room, then another room, then another room, and you move around. So that's not at all what it was. You're in the same room for the whole pre-op appointment, and overall I think it lasted about probably about 45 minutes, if not shorter. So you go in, and there were two nurses, and the first thing she said, which is not what any fat person wants to hear, is, "Can you take your top and your bra off, please?" And I said I wasn't expecting that, so I kind of awkwardly shuffled out of my bra, and I was wearing a dress, so I took my dress off. And then they laid me down on a table. So the first thing they did was read my blood pressure. And you know the little finger probe that they clip onto the end of your finger to test for, I think it's blood oxygen saturation. So that's the first thing they did. But at the same time they're doing all of this, they're asking you questions. So they're running through the pre-op screening questions. And those are everything you would think of. So like, do you smoke, do you drink, how often do you drink, if you do, family history and things like that. So I was struggling to concentrate. I didn't know where I was looking or what I was saying. I was too busy trying not to flop off the table, holding on to all my wobbly bits. And so my my oxygen saturation was fine. I think my blood pressure, they asked me if I was nervous, so I'm guessing it was a little bit high, and I was like, well, yeah, obviously. So the next thing they did was the ECG. So this is why you need to be naked, because they need to stick the pads onto you that will provide sort of the electrical current, and you have multiple all over the place. So I think I had one on the back of my neck here, one on the back of my neck here, a couple on the front of the chest. I had one under, I think one under each breast. And I think there were some lower down. You know, it was all happening so quickly, and I was kind of traumatized by having to be naked that I wasn't really sure. So she puts the pads on, and then they attach you to the machine. I don't know why, but I always thought an ECG would you'd be laid on the table and it would be a lengthy process, so you'd have to wait there for a while for them to get the data. But actually, once they've got a good signal, you only have it on you for about a minute, so it doesn't take them long to get the image they need. So they did that, and I really want to prepare you for this, because it was a surprise to me. She asked me to take my pants down because she needs to do a groin swab. So yeah, in every single pre-op video that I've watched, every single one, not one person has mentioned there being a groin swab. They mentioned other things, but no groin swab. And I think if I'd been mentally prepared for it, I wouldn't have been bothered. And also physically prepared, because if we're honest, and maybe it's oversharing, but it's winter, there's definitely some gardening and deforestation I could have done down there to prep for the day, if you know what I mean. So it's not an internal swab or anything like that. All they do is basically run a swab either side in the crease between your legs, where your groin is. So it doesn't take long. So that was fine. They carried on with the questions throughout this. Now, every place is different. Every hospital is different. America seems to do things completely different. And to an extent, Mexico and Turkey from the videos I've watched as well. So I was expecting to have a chest x-ray. There was no chest x-ray. I was expecting to have an ultrasound of the whole abdomen area. There was no ultrasound. It was literally just blood pressure, oxygen saturation, the groin swab, and the ECG. Oh, and the bloods. I forgot the bloods. Oh, God, the bloods. So I have blood tests all the time because I've got my Hashimoto's, and I've had anemia, so they need to check up on me a lot. I've never in my life had bloods this painful. I'm not a wimp by any means, but it's not her fault. She couldn't get anything out of me. So what had happened was I hadn't drunk anything because it was such a long car journey that I didn't want to spend the whole time busting for a wee. So I didn't drink, and because I was dehydrated, she was really struggling to get blood. But she was down there performing acrobatics or something. At one point she was on the floor with the needle trying to get my arm in a certain angle so the blood would run down and she could get some. So my advice would be make sure you're well hydrated before you have your bloods done. Now that was it in terms of the questions. In terms of the tests. Now, I want to warn you about one thing in the questions, because this is something that apparently is in the paperwork, but I never saw it, and it's not drawn to your attention. And if we're honest, when they send you through bunches of contracts, you sort of, unless you're my wife who's a lawyer, you sort of skim read through everything, and you might not necessarily catch on to some things. So I not screwed myself over, but basically my surgery has had to be cancelled and rearranged. So I was due to have surgery on the 13th of February, so it would have been exactly a week from my pre-op appointment. Now, what happened was, when they were doing all of the tests, they asked me, have you tested positive for COVID recently? Now, I had COVID back in January, so it was January the 2nd I tested positive for COVID. And to be honest, it did last a while, but it was never super serious. I didn't get any bad chest. I didn't get... sometimes for me, if anything goes into my chest, I end up with bronchitis. None of that happened. It was mainly all up here in my sinuses. But anyway, the point is, the nurse turned around and said that the hospital has a policy, and I'm assuming that a lot of the hospitals are, so check. The hospital has a policy that they will not do any procedure or operation until 7 weeks after you've tested positive for COVID. Now, if I tested on the 2nd of January, it would have only been 6 weeks to my operation. So when they told me that, it was a huge blow, I think, because obviously I've started the pre-op diet, well underway with that, and I'd really psyched myself up for it being on the 13th. But also I booked all the accommodation and everything because I'm coming down from the Midlands. So I don't know. I came out of the appointment feeling really down and bummed out about the whole thing. I think, one, because I felt like I had no dignity left, and two, I was really disappointed that the surgery was likely going to be cancelled. She did say there was a chance that it might go ahead, but I've had a call yesterday to confirm that it needs to be rearranged, and this morning I've rearranged the surgery, so it's just a week's delay, and that's not too bad. Although it does mean an extra bloody week of the pre-op diet, so my liver should be good and shrunk by the time it's surgery. So that's it really. There's not much more to cover. I just wanted you to be aware of the a couple of things like the COVID policy and the groin swab that I wasn't necessarily aware of, so that you can be mentally prepared. I know I probably made it sound horrible, but if you're not as self-conscious as me, you're probably not going to care. And honestly, the hospital specialises in bariatric surgery, so they've seen all sorts of body shapes and body types. They've seen it all before. I'm sure they're not going to have minded my boobs flopping around on the table. So you've got to put it into perspective, haven't you? It's not that much of a big deal that it's been delayed by a week. I can cope with that. And I understand why they're doing it. They want us to be fully recovered after COVID because of the anaesthesia and everything. So I'd rather be safe than sorry. So yeah, I'm re-gearing up. I've rebooked accommodation for surgery in a week and a half. I kind of can't believe it. I think as the time gets closer, I'll probably start to panic more. I've already had some really interesting thoughts on the pre-op diet, thinking, oh, I could probably do this myself. I don't need the surgery. But I think that's just my brain starting to panic and rebelling. And the truth is, if I could have done it before, I would have done it before. I've tried many times and I've failed. Oh, there's my cat in the background. Always has to make an appearance, don't you, Ren? So, yeah, that's it from me. She's nudging the camera now, which is great. Bless your heart. I'm going to be back probably at the weekend or in the middle of the week next week to go through the pre-op diet. I've had to get creative because I was getting really sick of just plain chicken and turkey and shakes and salad. So I just want to talk about what I've been eating, give you some ideas for some things that you could potentially eat. Might be useful, who knows? Alright, take care for now and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye. Mwah.